Welcome to the Change Life Destiny podcast, where healthcare is being reimagined one conversation at a time. We spotlight the people, innovations, and ideas moving us from sick care to self-care and from reactivity to true prevention. A place to connect, learn, and build a new future together. Get inspired at changelifedestiny.com. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Change Life Destiny podcast series. I'm your host, Stephanie, and today we are here with Daniel Powell from Spark Biomedical, and we're so excited to talk to him. He is going to be with us at the Changing Life and Destiny conference at the end of this month, and welcome to the show, Daniel.
Thank you so much for having me, Stephanie. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Okay, before we jump into your technology of Spark Biomedical, let's go ahead and learn a little bit about you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Daniel and how you found yourself in this particular space in the health industry?
Yeah, thank you. So I got here by kind of a circuitous route of different jobs, but my first career, I was an IT consultant. I was a Y2K consultant at one point in time.
That's crazy.
Find some people where we thought the world was going to end. And then I ended up getting a job at St. Jude Medical in Plano, Texas, in their neuromodulation division. So neuromodulation is the idea of stimulating the nervous system to change a disease outcome. And I absolutely fell in love with it. And that's been my career ever since, is medical devices and putting electricity into the nervous system to fix a health condition.
I had no idea that St. Jude was doing that work.
Yep. Not the Children's Hospital. It was St. Jude Medical, the pacemaker company.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
they lived lawsuit free with the same name.
Okay. How about that?
Abbott. It's now Abbott.
Abbott. Okay. That's a good thing to clear up for sure.
Yeah.
Listeners. Well, how about that?
Where you're going.
All right. Okay. Wow. How about that? Okay. So now you've done all of this work. You have gotten excited about it. That's wonderful. So tell us a little bit about Spark Biomedical.
Yeah. So most neuromodulation in the past was implanting electrodes in the body. So deep brain stimulation, put a wire in the brain. Vagus nerve stimulation, you'd wrap a wire around the vagus nerve and everything's implanted like a pacemaker.
Wow.
What we have pioneered at Spark is the idea that we can actually non-invasively stimulate the brain and the nervous system, and we access it from the ear. So we have built a wearable neurostimulator that stimulates the vagus and trigeminal nerve branches at the ear, and it's specifically FDA approved to treat addiction and specifically opioid withdrawal and opioid withdrawal symptoms.
Wow. Okay. So that's your main focus, but are there any, I can imagine that there's a ton of other benefit to using something like this.
Yeah, absolutely. So the fundamental way it's working is it's balancing an unbalanced autonomic system. So high sympathetic drive, high fight or flight. So when you fix a high sympathetic drive, you improve PTSD symptoms, anxiety, anything when that's out of balance is bad. And my sister was using the device and she has a disease where her hands get called Raynaud's disease. Her hands got better because that's an autonomic imbalance. So there's a lot of look into depression, anxiety, a lot of different conditions that are being explored with this. Our particular next major goal in this is something called acute stress reaction, which is trauma.
Yeah.
So treating the trauma after it happens, before it becomes PTSD and before it becomes then addiction, which is a series of events.
Okay. So is there a certain working with a company like Abbott, is there something that geared you towards this specific type of addiction, stress, of this type of work to help the autonomic nervous system specifically?
Not as much. My two co-founders are the smart ones. They're the neuroscientists behind the brains of this. I get to go on podcasts and talk about it. So they were really looking into it and brought me on the journey. I will say as with most families, I've lived adjacent to addiction and I've seen what it's done to my brother's family firsthand. And there was definitely a spot on my heart that was like, I want to try to help this disease.
Yeah. I love that. I think that if asked, I am fairly sure that this has touched the majority of families on the planet, honestly. And with all of the things that are happening in the world right now, and people are reaching for all kinds of things to help them make themselves feel better. So some of them are going to be helpful and some of them are not going to be helpful. So that's wonderful. Okay. All right. So help me understand this a little bit more. How does the wearable work?
Yep.
Just on
Yeah.
an ear?
Yep. So we have a little earpiece. I'll hold it out that goes
Okay.
over the ear that
Okay.
has
That kind of,
hydrogels
okay.
that makes the interface, and it puts mild electricity on the vagus and trigeminal nerve branches. This little divot right in front of your ear, right above the ear canal, are the two spots it's stimulating. Sends a signal to the brainstem, and the brainstem then begins the process of bringing you out of fight or flight, bringing you into rest and digest. And then it's also releasing your own opioids, endorphins that are filling vacant opioid channels within the system. What this
Wow.
looks like clinically, so let's back up and say, why do we have an opioid epidemic?
Sure.
Um, we have an opioid epidemic not because opioids get you high, but because they get you so physically dependent on them that it is absolute living hell to get off of them.
Mm.
And my nephew, he goes, I wasn't living for high. He goes, I was running from withdrawal every 4 to 6 hours. And
Oh,
that fear of withdrawal is like a fundamental instinctual fear that you're going to die. And so we can put this on somebody in the fetal position in full blown withdrawal, shaking, sweating through their pits, running to the bathroom in gastric distress. We put them on it, and then 30 to 60 minutes, they could sit next to me in relatively comfort, be part of this podcast. It is profound.
wow. Wow. That is powerful. Okay. Wow. Wow. So it does not have to be working on someone who is not in distress. You can work with anyone at any stage,
To
is what
bring
I'm
them
hearing.
out of it. Now, ideally, when somebody comes into the clinic and they're ready to get clean and get off fentanyl or pain pills or whatever, you would throw it on them as quick as possible so they never go into that extreme discomfort.
Right.
But the way we ran the clinical trials for the FDA, we actually pushed people into moderate withdrawal, then purposely brought them out just to prove it worked.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Let's talk a little bit more about these case studies. So,
Sure.
what are some of your favorite stories of change when it comes to this device?
Oh, as you can imagine, it's hard to get testimonials. We have three really good ones on our website at sparrowrx.com. That's the name of the product.
Okay.
You just scroll down, and Jeremy was one of my favorites because he was in recovery, but he was on high doses of methadone or
Mm,
Suboxone, which kept him cloudy and fuzzy.
mm.
And he got on our device, and he was clean and was able to sleep through the night, and all the anxiety was gone. But his father had a medical emergency, and he took him to the hospital in the middle of the night. And he goes, I never would have been there for my father if it wasn't for
Wow.
this. So that's great. The
Wow.
other one of our very first patients that went through our very first clinical trial in Austin, Eliza, she's one of the testimonials. She wanted to do a testimony. She had such a profound effect. She was so excited. We drove to Austin, got camera gear packed in a little room, and filmed her. And you'll cry. I could still tear up watching her testimonial. Fast forward 7 years later, she's working at the rehab clinic that she got clean at. She has a baby on the way. Her life is good. And so I just found that out about 2 months ago that she had gone
Oh,
back to work for the recovery center that
isn't
got
that
her.
fascinating? Oh my goodness. Okay, so tell me a little bit more about you mentioned I want to circle back to something else you said. You mentioned about people who have experienced trauma and then utilizing this device before they get to the PTSD section of their brain. So tell us a little bit more about that. How does that work?
Yep. And this is not FDA approved. So I'm
Got it.
describing something we're in clinical testing. We're doing a clinical test in North Carolina where we're taking car wreck victims,
Mm,
car accident victims, and then putting this on them to prove this works. And we've already run a pilot with the military. So when you suffer trauma, or what the military or Department of Defense calls acute stress reaction,
mm,
your brain goes into this it's back to autonomics, hyper
mm.
fight or flight. You're in an anxious state. And so we're bringing you out of that so you're not stuck in it, and that you're not in that constant hyper vigilant upset state. And so we're using the exact same concept of bringing down fight or flight.
Mhm.
I'll share one anecdotal. Unbeknownst to me, one of our devices got sent to one of our distributors sent it to a friend. This guy in downtown Dallas was standing there, and somebody walked up and shot another man right in front of him, murdered him, just right, like within 2 feet of him.
Oh my goodness.
And he was traumatized and had acute stress reaction. He got one of our devices. This is all off label and can't be sold for this.
Sure.
And he said it saved his life. He was waking up, couldn't sleep, severe panic attacks. And he slowly got better using the device. And then he was on the way got where he could travel again, was on the way to the airport and realized he forgot the device and like immediately turned around and drove back home because he knew he wasn't. And then eventually he didn't need it at all. And he's doing great. And I just randomly met this guy at a conference and he's like, your device saved my life. And you're just
wow. Wow. Okay. So then how long are people using this device? Is this you put it on and you leave it on for a long time? How long is the application?
Yeah, let's talk specifically for addiction. So if somebody's coming in and they're like, I'm ready to get off opioids, they're going to wear it 24/7 or at least during waking hours for the first 5 to 7 days. That's that hellish acute withdrawal where you see in the movies, and that's that worst of the hyper fight or flight.
Sure.
We just completed a new clinical trial, 108 patients. It's called the Restore trial, where we said, okay, now what about post-acute withdrawal? What about the next 90 days? If you can make it to 90 days clean, the statistics that you stay clean are really good. And we're looking at cravings. Okay, you get through the acute withdrawal. Mm-hmm. Your body's still been, your nervous system's been bathed in opioids for months or years. Yeah. You still have cravings. You still are sluggish. Your body's operating off an imbalanced chemical cocktail.
Right. Takes a while for all that to move through.
Yeah. So in that case, their patients or subjects are wearing it 4 to 6 hours a day at the beginning, and then 2 hours every other day at the end. And we're just now publishing those clinical results, but we increased the ability to stay in treatment, what we'll call treatment retention or relapse prevention, by 7x over the control group. So using the device long-term to stay clean, continue to battle that post-acute withdrawal, which is very underestimated. You can make it through the cold turkey, hellish 5-7 days, but 2 weeks from now, when you just feel horrible and then you've been at it, that's where the relapse comes in.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Gosh, I can think of so many applications for this. Is it connected to, so you talked about this, that it's over your ear and you showed us what that device looks like. Is it connected to something? Is there a box?
Yeah. It just has a cable. So the earpiece connects to a cable and you got the little device.
I see.
It's ambulatory, wear it on your belt. It can be used at home. So we have home approval by the FDA. So what I've also discovered in this journey is people really don't like going to rehab.
You don't we have a whole section talking about that at our conference because go ahead.
No, you get treated like a criminal. They take away your shoelaces and your phone and you're told where to walk and where to go. Or you could be at home with your dog, and so there's almost, anyway, I'm not an expert to tell if at-home rehab or outpatient, or I'm not an expert in that part of the treatment. But what we've seen is a lot of people come to us and look for telehealth options, which we have partners that we can refer them to if there's an inquiry.
Okay. Yeah, that's
the device, ship it directly to their home, support them. The one thing we learned is we're also not counselors. I'm a medical device manufacturer.
Right,
and then
right.
Our phones would be blowing up with people who need therapy. And we're like, I'm not trained for this.
Yeah.
So we have a couple of good telehealth partners that handle all of that component.
Oh, fantastic. So is this something that just anybody can order, or do they need a prescription for it, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's prescription. So you need an MPI number and then could prescribe it. And then that's, again, we have a nationwide telehealth partner we can send people to.
Got it. Okay. So they can go get their initial consult with that telehealth partner and then start working with you if that works for them.
Yep.
Amazing. I do feel like this is such a huge conversation and something that more and more people are talking about. So I'm really grateful for this. Okay. So I don't know if we got there. Did we talk about the PTSD? Oh, yes, we did. And how much people need to actually wear it in order to get out of that. Okay, so what's the next step? We're talking about addiction. This is a huge deal, right? You guys are primarily focusing on that. But when it comes to what the other applications are, what's the next step? What are other things that you guys are thinking about using this for?
So one of the things we're working on is neonatal opioid withdrawal syndrome. So we have little
Ah,
baby earpieces and clinical trials to try to get an indication for babies born into withdrawal.
wow.
Um, they go through just a hellish first 30 days of life. And neonatal trauma, they shake and tremor and they
Mm,
scream, they don't cry, and it's heartbreaking. So we're committed to find a solution for that. And then we're running clinical studies in co-occurring PTSD, OUD, opioid use disorder. And then we're running an alcohol detox study. An interesting
okay.
thing about alcohol, because alcohol is much bigger than opioids. And alcohol, opioid detox, you think you literally believe you're going to die. Your amygdala
Mm,
is misfiring. That's where you process fear and pain. That's your caveman brain that says run from saber-toothed tigers to
yes.
live. And it's in a complete disorder. So you think you're going to die, but you're not.
Yeah.
Alcohol detox is a different network in the brain and isn't as severe, but you could have a deadly seizure. You could actually have a physiological trigger. So you would have thought we would start with alcohol, but the risk profile is higher because it is a mortal condition or could be.
Right.
But now we're working on alcohol as the next expansion as well.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. This is great. So, who are your ideal practitioner partners? Who are you looking for to partner with for this?
Mainly concierge medicine. Big
Okay.
problem is it's not reimbursed. And so this is frustrating.
Mm.
We are working on it. It's just a long process. And the system is just, I don't know if anybody's noticed, but the American healthcare reimbursement system is a little
Hmm.
broken.
So
Huh?
so interesting that
Um,
you say that. Yes, I would agree.
so we work with a lot of concierge doctors and unfortunately more people that could pay for it versus can't.
Sure.
Some programs we really like, they understand the value of having this as a tool within the clinic to prevent people from doing what we call AMA, against medical advice, leaving before you're
Mm,
done. And that's very costly economically. And it's obviously bad for the patient
sure.
or client. So we do have some centers who've done the math and go, oh no, we're just going to integrate this in. Some places just have one of our devices as a rescue device. You have somebody who's just, I want to leave right now. And they're like, would you just put this on,
Yeah.
for a couple of hours and then you're calmed down. And then we prevent that knee jerk fight or flight, I want to get out of here reaction.
Mhm.
So those are some of our key centers. Like I said, it works in intensive inpatient, outpatient, or at home therapy. It goes and it can be used with what's called MOUD, medicines for opioid use disorders, such as buprenorphine or methadone or Suboxone, or it could be used completely for abstinence. So it's not
Mm.
selective. It could be paired with those drugs if that's the chosen path, and that's the standard of care in America. So we want to partner with that.
Mhm.
So very flexible to any treatment paradigm.
Yeah. Okay. So when we're talking about the autonomic nervous system, there's again, I'm coming back to like how many applications there are for this because if you tested the majority of people on this planet, our autonomic nervous systems are completely out of whack and the majority of people are in fight or flight.
Yeah.
So, regardless of opioid use or not. So, what is there an application for that as well?
Yeah, so all kinds of stress, disease states. Strangely enough, irritable bowel syndrome, yeah,
Mm,
is one, which
sure.
is an autonomic imbalance. That's think of in the middle of opioid withdrawal, you have severe diarrhea. That this
They're connected.
fixes it just fixes normal IBS. So
Right.
there's a device on the market specifically for that.
Okay.
The list is long.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
we're actually we're actually looking at it for a completely different new area, and that is in hemostasis, so in blood loss. In addition to the signal to the brain, the vagus nerve travels out of your cranium and touches all your major organs,
Uh huh.
including the spleen. The spleen houses about 30% of your blood platelets at any given time. And we have demonstrated we can send the signal down to the spleen, modulate the platelets, they form quicker, stronger clots, and in the case of a bleed event, there's a 50% reduction in blood loss. This is a was a DARPA initiative 24 years ago out of the Feinstein Institute in New York.
Okay.
About 3 years ago, we licensed it and did the first in human and proved this could be done. It had all been done by implanted vagus nerve stem. We proved it could be done from the ear. It doesn't make sense to implant something then to prevent blood loss in the future.
Right.
So it needed to be a wearable, and we partnered with them and licensed it. And then we've proven the first in human reduction in blood loss. So we're trying to bring that to market. Think surgical blood loss, non-compressible hemorrhage, like postpartum hemorrhage, GI bleeds, and then we'll move into trauma and other things.
I was going to say, I have a brother that is an EMT, and I can imagine that out on the field, you've got somebody who's bleeding out on the field, and you pop the sucker on and it helps them to stop. Oh my goodness.
My goal is to have this in every ambulance in 3 years.
Yes, I like that goal. I support that goal.
So completely different from the neurological side. It's the hematology side.
However, it's still tied into the neurological side.
Yeah. So the concept's actually called the neural tourniquet.
Wow. Ooh, I love that. There's so much cool stuff you can do with this, Daniel. That's exciting. Okay, so we talked about some fun things. So let's talk about you and your ideas. So let's dream a little bit about the future of healthcare. We all know that the system is not what we want it to be. It's not ideal. It's not optimal. It's not helping the most for the best. And so if you're thinking about the future of healthcare, when it comes to prevention, when it comes to root cause issues, what would Daniel say that your vision is for the future of healthcare?
There's several initiatives at the federal level to change access for addiction treatment, which is fantastic. So I would love to see those actually come to fruition, and like the promise that there's a lot of people within the system that really want this. If we could get some bold initiatives. We're actually working and partnering, doing something actually outside the healthcare system and it's just in its beginning phases, but putting together an evergreen fund from high net worth individuals who want to leave a legacy that builds a pool of money that just buys these devices. So let's say I get reimbursement all done. But for me to make money, the system has to cost $3,500, $4,000. Your copay is, if your copay is $100 or $900, if you're on Medicaid, you still can't get this. You can't afford it. You can't afford a $100 copay.
Yeah.
And so our goal is to build a fund, again, of ultra high net worth individuals whose lives have been touched by this, that we can very affordably cut out all the red tape of everything I had to do to charge $3,500, get paid a reasonable amount, and then we deploy these to Medicaid facilities where the people who need these the most are. So there's a vision that kind of starts to go around the current healthcare system. I'm hoping it comes together.
Yeah.
We got a couple of good champions though for it.
That's amazing. That's a beautiful vision. I love that, because you're absolutely right. The system is not helping. It's certainly not helping those that really need it. Well, Daniel, I cannot wait to come by your booth at the Changing Life and Destiny conference. If you're listening to this before the conference, please come and see Daniel and check out Spark Biomedical. If you are listening and you are a concierge practitioner or know someone who is a concierge practitioner, let's go ahead and get you connected to Daniel and see what you guys can do together, because this is a huge help to so many people. And that's what we're here for. We're here to change lives and the destiny of their futures. So Daniel, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for championing everything that you're doing and for being curious and interested in these topics and for sharing your stories with us.
Oh, thank you for giving me a chance to get the word out.
Absolutely. We'll see you soon.
All right. See you, Stephanie.
That's a wrap for today's episode of the Change Life Destiny podcast. If you loved what you heard, share it with a friend and follow us for more bold conversations and breakthrough ideas. Ready to take the next step? Visit changelifedestiny.com to join the movement. See you next time, and keep diving in, learning, and leading the change.